All right. Hello, everyone. Today I have Knowe Rata here on the channel to have a conversation with me. Before I let Noah speak, I'll just say a few things about him. Noah also speaks about awakening and this kind of shift in consciousness. Um, and yeah, I love Noah's sharing. He's got YouTube and Instagram where he just shares his authentic transmission of this. And we actually connected a couple of days ago. We recorded an epic conversation, just sharing our perspectives, and then it only recorded Noah's face the whole time. So we decided we'll come back, do a new one, and see what happens. So thanks for joining me again, Noah.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on again. And yeah, it was really I felt it was really a nice conversation last time, and I wasn't sure if we were going to um, come back for a second, but yeah, here we are, and I think it's even probably built off of that one. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's see what happens. And yeah, it's been really nice connecting with you and whoever's watching. So,
Yeah.
or listening. So, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, let me just say, if anybody, so when I post this on people on YouTube, if you want to hear the audio only version of the first podcast, then just say in the comments and maybe I'll upload that to YouTube as well. Because I do still have the recording. So, anyways, let's see where we go today. Yeah, what do you what do you feel like talking about around awakening? I'll start with this, right? Let's start with this. One of the things that came up the first time we connected in my side was how Noah and I have um, slightly different expressions of this awakening, and I'll let you say what you think on this because you had some really good points on this as well. But what I loved was our slightly different transmissions and how the two perspectives when they came together um, can maybe just balance out certain fixations in people watching, and like I felt it in my own energy field as well. So like for me there's been a lot recently around um, kind of going deep into the shadow, like letting go, kind of death experiences, which some people might have seen on my YouTube. That's kind of just more authentically what was coming through for me. But what I would see with Noah's transmission was more of this like radiant um, lightness and the kind of the more expression of the life side of things. So when we're talking about non-duality and the kind of all-inclusive nature of consciousness, it's including both the death and the life side of things. But what I just loved about our two energies was how we were expressing from slightly different poles of it. And I just love that we could come and have a conversation and yeah, just kind of let that energy mix and our different perspectives when we're fundamentally talking about the same thing, but it's also going to come out in different ways and in our own um, like areas of our own themes that we're exploring as well, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like um we were saying last time, and exactly like you just said, there are all these different paths someone can go down, and there's not really like a right or wrong way. You know, someone might feel they need more somatic work and more um body awareness work and trauma work, and another person might look at the you know look at the non-dual understanding, and or some sharing along those lines, or a book, and they might just get it straight away. And I think we were touching on last time, I think we all have such, even though we all share the same being, what we are at the core is, consciousness pervading everything and everyone, but we all have such unique paths as like a fractal
Yeah.
of that in this space-time human world, and it's never going to be
Yeah.
uh the exact same for two people, and that's what makes it so uh amazing in a way as well. It's like a gift, and I believe
Mm,
where um, life presents certain things, like there's an array of like ups and downs, and we have all these experiences through life, and they often bring us uh, back to what we really are and what's here, because there's really no other way. Even if someone ignores it, say up until um, their their body's about to die, like it has to be seen through at some stage. Like reality has to be faced. And I know we were saying last time, and I thought this was a good one. Like I actually heard or read somewhere that when when people are given like 3 weeks to live, it's not like they're going and they're rushing around seeing everyone and doing everything. Most people, like the studies say, are actually just sitting and watching like the steam rise off their coffee mug, and they're very intensely present with what is there, because they know the specialness and the sacredness of
mm,
it, and that it's actually like a gift that's been given to us, and that's actually here all the time. Like everything here is really a gift that's given to us, but we might miss it, right? When we're up here, we miss everything that's actually on. There's these beautiful things always happening,
mm.
that the universe, source, God is kind of like just giving, and we kind of like go against that, right? Because we get lost in our own stuff, and then yeah. So
Yeah, I like that analogy or that kind of thought experiment or whatever it is of someone dying. And for me, that gives us something nice to go into, which is kind of what I started with as well, is like this duality, or in fact non-duality, of life and death, where this kind of reality of death, like that's what that is, right? It's like someone that has 3 weeks left to live is now actually more alive than ever, because they're really um paying attention, I suppose, or really um yeah, like you said, you really just stop all this future running, right? Because you realize that, like, and I don't know, this is like there's been so many reflections around death, and and I love it because death is normally this like seen as this heavy, um, like scary. If you look at how it is in the collective as well, death is like, if you start talking about death, it's like, whoa, like why are you so like talking about something so horrible? We should be talking.
what's wrong? What's wrong
What
with you?
what's wrong with you, right? It's like that's just such a dark place to be. But I love that how you said it as well, because that kind of shows that there isn't a duality, and when you collapse that duality of life and death, where you see that they're not against each other either. Like the way to um because I would say just what's coming up for me is like what that person is going through is they're accepting their death. When someone is kind of given 3 weeks to live, they're saying, "Oh wow, I'm actually going to die. So now um, I'm going to stop rejecting all these experiences." And you notice like uh, just the magical impermanence of everything. You're just like, wow. And that's what we hide from ourselves like most of the times. Whereas that's what the mind does, where it's just like, oh, everything's going to be around forever. So I have all these problems, or like I have
Mm.
to like just plan endlessly and think about everything endlessly. But um, in fact, like we're constantly both living and dying, because there isn't even time in the way that the mind thinks
There
of.
isn't one or the other. They just cancel each other
Well,
out.
that's
And
it. Yeah,
exactly like you just said, it's the seeing. And for those people, through the unreality of time, even though, yes, in this linear life, we have, time is something conceptual, but
yeah,
that being must see that, well, when they're told that there is 2 weeks, well, then there's no time. So
yeah,
you're only left with now, and that's what
yeah,
dying is, and really what we're all going through. Again, it's not to make it sound heavy, but it's realizing that it doesn't actually exist, that what you are um, is just opening to more love, more presence, and It's beyond what we can actually un we know it, but not actually conceptually. Like we won't ever be able to put it in a book or on a wall, but we just know it experientially unfolding, that we're opening to what we are beyond space and time, and that transcends that
Mm.
once that seems to finish. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And the cool thing is that it's nothing is left out. That's the all-inclusive nature of this. So even the supposed timeline is not left out. You know, this is like an important um, thing that I've kind of worked through, is that like anywhere that we create a fixation, it creates complication or creates suffering. But the all-inclusive nature of reality, right, is reality is naturally all-inclusive because everything is reality and reality is everything, right? um so it includes everything, right? It includes the mundane, and it includes the spiritual, it includes duality, and it includes non-duality. So even like, you know, often we feel, and I'm sure people can relate to this, like often we feel with like spirituality and meditation and awakening, there's this like need to transcend the human realm. But that's just creating another duality as well, you know, in the sense of um, the non-dual is better than the dual, but it's like, well now you've got two again. You know, so the it's all inclusive, right? And we're all just kind of, what we're also doing, I feel, is we're all just exploring different themes, or we came here to maybe balance out certain fixations. We touched on this a little bit in the previous conversation, which was like past lives and karma and that kind of stuff. Which for me, you know, again, we don't have concrete proof of anything, but for me, it just makes sense on why certain um, beings or souls or incarnations will come in and face such different realities. I see it often as a balancing out of maybe what we might have explored in different incarnations or in different themes, or even, you know, ancestrally through our DNA, or all of these kinds of things. Like for me, something I realized was that there's a strong pull towards the escapist kind of or just wanting to go and sit in a cave like my entire life, like that kind of monastic pull. And it just feels like this incarnation, or what I came to explore this time, was to balance out that fixation that it's like to awaken means to exit the matrix, so to speak. um and it feels like what this kind of incarnation wants to explore is like, can you realize that with the balance of it's not apart from the human collective reality as well, and like that balance of, you know, knowing the truth and seeing the collective but not getting lost in the collective. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like choosing to come back into separation. Like once anyone watching or the being realizes their nature and the truth of who and what they are, then like coming back into the world, like you don't have to. And I think that's where people get a bit confused maybe with
Yeah.
bypassing or spiritual bypassing. That word is like they might see that nature or that spacious awareness, free of anything in the world, but then just feel like, well, then I just have to stay. As long as I stay there
Yeah.
and do nothing, then I'll be okay,
Yeah.
and nothing can hurt me. But you can notice that and then go back into your life, and then in at least what feels true here is in recognition of that nature, then um walk walk in that, and serve in that, however that looks, with people around you or your work. And I think, and I believe, and um maybe not this very moment in linear time, but we're heading there, where more and
Yeah.
more beings are starting to walk
Yeah.
with that recognition. So yeah.
Yeah, because like that, I love the way you put it, because that is then breaking down the duality of awakening and life, you know. So it's like we have, you can have that openness or whatever realization or touching into it, and then that's exactly what tends to happen. Is it's like you said, okay, so I need to hold on to this to not get lost in that. And it's a, you know, it's to kind of be nuanced with it. It's an understandable thing that needs to be worked out, you know, because like it is easy to get, or like there's phases to it, you know, where you can like go back into the noise of the world, and then maybe people need like a retreat or something to clarify again. But I think what we're both saying here is that at some point that has to dissolve as well, where you realize that to kind of hold back apart from um, life is just creating another duality, you know. So it's like, okay,
Hmm.
um, yeah, now the truth is to walk this. And then I feel like we all face our own, like, or like it will continue to clarify in the ways that it needs to, you know, like where, um, because also you mentioned like bypassing, like also um, the human doesn't need to be bypassed as well. Like that's another massive one in this space where the like being a self is something that is like, oh no, I'm not allowed to use even like things like I and me and mine. You know, it's like I'm not allowed to say that, like that I exist or that I do this or that I do that.
Hmm.
And then that's just its own like mind again creating a new duality, you know, of like what is allowed and what
Exactly.
isn't allowed.
And they all exist at once, like you were saying before. I feel the more we wake up authentically, then the more that comes through who who we are as a person, and we don't need to be, we don't need to apologize for being like that if we're walking in that
Mhm.
truth. And we all have that within us. We all have that. Like there's the Zen tradition which calls it like just the uh, it's an inner goodness. So you're not trying to people please or be liked by everyone. You just have this love and respect for yourself and reality and life and others. And that doesn't mean you need to um you're loving in your nature. It doesn't mean you need to like everyone, but you're walking in a path of authenticity
Yeah,
and truth. So
yeah.
yeah.
That's what, as you were saying all of that, how you finished it is exactly what I feel as well, is to be, you know, because that's also a new like mind thing that you see in a lot of spiritual traditions, is all of this focus on love and light and compassion. And it's beautiful, right? Like we've both had uh history in Buddhist kind of paths. Like I know you've taught me that, and I've had as well in like Vipassana, and I've done multiple retreats in these traditions. And for me, in the end, and I feel like this is what you were saying as well, is the truest love is pure, honest authenticity. It's not like this endless people pleaser. Um, you know, and again, like it's that love and that kind of compassion for all beings can still be there, but it doesn't always play out the way that the mind thinks it does. And then this is kind of something that I've had to work through in myself and realize, as we all do, where it was like, yeah, true endless compassion for everybody is sometimes like just being so ruthlessly yourself that it triggers like what's being blocked in other people around you, you know, which I think that can sometimes become a fixation, from, again, not to point fingers at any specific community, but you can often see this kind of spiritual identity of like, I'm never allowed to get angry, or I'm never allowed to um, let this emotion through my system. And yet, if it's honest and authentic, then it is the most loving thing that you can do, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, and I was going to say exactly what you just said with that aspect of when you walk that, it might not be your intention at all to upset anyone, but you
Yeah.
might, like a family member or someone that's maybe hasn't started uh doing any inward work. Like you might just by saying something, uh it might stir up that being, but that might be exactly what they need at that
Yeah.
time, because then they can see, and even with myself, if that, and it very rarely happens, but if it um has or does, it's like just shows me, it's an indicator, okay, well, I'm not free somewhere
Yeah.
inside here, because it's like it's it's me that's feeling that. And if I loved myself fully and was so it was at ease with myself, then I would just be, yeah, it wouldn't happen. But that being said, there are people who, it's because I think there might be some people who think, or I've heard in the past, challenge with this idea, like, well, what about if someone has like a uh there's someone abusive in their life, or they're being threatened by someone, and that's like a different situation, that's an extreme, and we're speaking about everyday reality and our communication and relationships with people.
Yeah.
So it's not like if someone is actually in like a threatening situation, that they just say, oh, well, I should just be okay with this. And I'm not sure if you've probably thought about similar.
Well, hey, just to expand on that a little bit more, like what were you meaning by that? 'Cause I think that could be something good to explore. Like, yeah, because what the point that I was making, but I'm curious to hear what you mean by this, like in an abusive relationship or whatever, um, was being honest with whatever is arising, even if that triggers um, somebody else, because sometimes that's exactly what's needed to break down either an illusion in ourselves or the person we're in relationship with. But I just wanted, what was the point about the abusive relationship or
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
So not even that. Like, if there's any relationship, or say someone has a family member, where, people are in situations where it's not nice, and they can't just come back to being, like, maybe they are actually under threat, or maybe there's, I don't know, there's a car coming at them or something. And I know these are just examples, but then, like, it's our role as a human to, like, uh step out of that situation
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
uh take precaution.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I haven't found myself, thankfully, in those situations. So yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. Like I think that lines up truly with what we were saying, because I think this is where people get stuck in those situations. And I haven't had it play out at the extremes myself, but I've worked with people that have, and I've seen a lower form of the dynamic in myself, where I stayed in a relationship that was no longer um, growthful for me, but I stayed in it for certain reasons. And I feel like it's the same dynamic. It just plays out on more extreme levels with trauma and all of this. And for me, it ties back into exactly what we were saying about um, authenticity and honesty and truth. Um, because for me, the only reason I was staying in that relationship was to try to protect a certain identity, or to try to hold on to. And also what for me, it comes back to not wanting to hurt somebody else. But that was just keeping a dynamic going that wasn't serving either of us anymore. But at the same time, I feel like these kind of relationships force us to work through things, that patterns that we're holding on to, or uh, like to reflect back aspects of ourselves, until it gets so uncomfortable that we finally allow that thing to come through us, if that makes sense. Like, that's kind of what it, just reflecting back on a relationship that I could think of, where it was like, I'm going to stay in this, to not feel lonely on myself, or to like kind of not make the other person hurt, until eventually that discomfort of authenticity of something in me that knew for a long time, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right, that got so uncomfortable to resist that, whereas like it finally had to break through. Um, I'm not sure if that's kind of what you're talking about, but I feel like maybe that links in.
Yeah, yeah, a similar thing. And maybe even there's like the recognition of being, or there's a presence within the relationship or person, but there's still so many layers that we have, right, on a human level that can affect things. And so like I think it's always like the more we come back to who we are, beingness, embodied presence, and uh that just kind of sorts us out. That sorts
Yeah.
ourselves out, I feel, and it prepares us, something might not work, but then we can meet others on a deeper level where we're more at peace and accepting within ourselves, and then we can have that reflected back. And maybe someone is in something, and like you said, you've experienced something along the lines of that, and I have as well, where there can be that aspect of shared beingness and growth, but yeah, we're all kind of um coming back to what we are, and then that comes through, like you were saying, the human, which we kind of in this human realm are still like working it
Yeah.
out. So um yeah, I really, that at least feels true here. I'm not sure there'd be many people, if any, out there who are just in like perfect uh synchronicity all the time, and
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
sort of challenges and this kind of thing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. I just wanted to go back to something you said at the beginning there, which something came up which felt quite relevant was these kind of relationships as well. Sometimes it's exactly what's needed for to trigger these kind of shifts as well. That's what it was for me. Was it where it's like maybe if you look at the average human, we're not like for me when I was in that relationship, I wasn't even in contact. I mean, obviously you're always in contact, but consciously I wasn't in contact with this recognition of myself, and that relationship served its exact role to disrupt the perceived human world enough, and the identity structures enough so that it made me start questioning who am I without this relationship? Who is this me? And yeah, that came to mind when we were talking about relationship and the whatever it is in relationship, right? Whether it's abusive and traumatic or this and that, it might be exactly what we need to actually wake up, even,
Yeah.
that's what it was for me. That's triggered like my whole awakening was the ending of that relationship. It was like a massive disappearance of an old identity. And then I was like, oh my God, I don't know who I am anymore. And that kind of took me on this path
Yeah.
personally. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that kind of counters in a good way what I said before, even how like, maybe that is exactly what everything, maybe it is exactly what we need at the time. And maybe on a soul level, before we
Yeah.
plug in, you know, it could be that
You're setting it
uh,
all up.
this is all designed, and well, it is a divine design. So
Yeah. No,
um again and,
I
and
love
again
that
and
perspective.
again, people will still try, and maybe someone listening, I'm sure lots, most not, but might feel, oh, how could you say that? Like, why would I choose this or this
Yeah, yeah,
situation? But that's because on this dualistic level, we think that way, whereas that's not the
yeah,
case in reality. What's actually wanting to come through the growth, the consciousness, and what's kind of beyond
yeah.
space time. And that being said, I wanted to ask you, yeah, like maybe for someone listening who maybe is thinking or feels like, oh well, yeah, I kind of like I understand this intellectually, but I've got this job, or I've got this situation, and like it's like, well, what's the big deal with this? Like, where is this heading?
Mm.
With the current times we're in, like why is it important?
Mm.
And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, good points there. I'll go back to what you said at the beginning. Like, yeah, this can be very triggering, that kind of perspective of um, it is all divinely orchestrated, like even your suffering. And I think this is we can get to what you said at the end there later, but I just feel like there was so many important points there. Is that is the realization as well, is that your suffering is your enlightenment as well. Your um, your worst situations that you've ever been in is unconditional love. So that's and that can be triggering, right? But it's what it is triggering is to the identity structure, right? The identity structure that wants to believe that everything is not always unconditional love playing out in whatever way that love chooses to play out. And love can be brutal, but I like what you said as well about I feel like that as well. We all kind of set up maybe really challenging scenarios for ourselves in the interest, because this is what it feels like for me. It feels like really seeing how dark a place love can still bloom from. I've reflected on that sometimes myself when there's been because there's been a lot of physical challenges in this body, just on many different levels. And when reflecting on it, it was like, well, why would I set up such a challenging journey for myself, to the points where it was often like, do I even want to keep going with this journey? And it was like, it was just, and I feel like this is what the whole divine play is, right? Why do we forget ourselves if we were always whole? What's the point of separation if we're always this? And I feel like it's to like, what depths of separation can we go into? What depths of feeling completely disconnected from love can we go into, and then still return and realize like, wow, even from that place, love never truly left me. Like no matter how dark it got, or no matter how supposedly traumatic it was still love, just in like certain forms or whatever. Yeah. So
Yeah, and it's like the ultimate game that consciousness can play,
yeah.
right? Like the ultimate forgetting, as if like I this came to me the other day, as if like, you have the chance, say with even a game you play now or a VR game, and it's like this is the most immersive experience you can ever go into,
Yeah.
but the catch is you're going to forget everything before, and you're going to completely forget who you are
Yeah.
in to have this experience. Uh, and yeah, when I think
And we
when we
still sign
say
up.
like, yeah,
Like we chose it.
um, yeah, yeah, it's like, yeah, are things really like, is it like just for fun, or is it like boring on a soul level? I don't know,
Yeah.
but like, um,
I see.
and then yeah, no, the remembering is the love. And I think, when we say love here, we mean like the present moment, because it's loving, right? And when we're present, we're not, we know that piece. All of us know that it has a loving nature to it when we experience that with someone else, or watching, listening to some music, or watching a sunset. We're kind of revealing us, that love's like revealing
Yeah.
itself. And by being more present, like we're opening to that. And yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said there, and I think I can tie it back into what you were saying earlier when you asked me that question. Because you said there, like we all know this love, but I can just see people's minds, like, and understandably, like when you're in a lot of suffering or when you're feeling very lost, responding with like, no, I don't. I have no idea what you're talking about, or like what we're talking about. Um, and then in response to like, so what does this have to do with like, my daily life, or the struggles I'm facing in reality, or people that feeling maybe they're interested in what we're talking about, but it's not very clear. So for me, what comes up around there is, well, firstly, that point of like, because I can see exactly how the mind would say this, like, no, I don't know that love you're talking about. Like you're making an assumption or something like that, how the mind would see it. And what I would say for people is, nature. I think we spoke a little bit about this in the past conversation. Nature is where, and I think you're using the word beingness, and I'm using the word love, and we're talking about the same thing. Is where that beingness is very much clearer. It's that like, and I use this a lot. Like when I was going through some like very dark night of the soul periods, and like before it had some of these recognitions, I would just go and sit out in nature. And it's like you were saying, like or whatever it is for something, like you said, music or a song, or even just that love that you've experienced with another human or a pet or from a movie or anything like that. You know, we all get these um, tastes or glimpses of something, um, yeah, just beyond us, or like the magic of this. Uh, and it's playing out all the time. But if that's not very obvious, then it might be worth it to explore uh, the places where it is more obvious. And this is what I've done for myself many times when it's like, you know, I can so easily get sucked into like Instagram and YouTube and all of these things, like trying to like, okay, put messages out there and all of that. And then life starts to get complicated again. And then I just go put myself out somewhere beautiful in nature. And I'm like, of course, you know, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what that reality is. So maybe for people, if you are feeling that, like, again, this is your life, right? So if you're really hating the environments that you're in or whatever, make the steps that you can, where you can experience things slightly differently. And just to finish this point off, I know that it can often feel like you don't have a choice. You know, it's like I'm in this situation and I don't have a choice. But you actually always do have this like small step that you can take, or this small reorientation that you can take, this like direction that you can take that's going to be more in tune with authenticity and love and beingness. So yeah, I mean that's just what I would say to like people struggling. It's just take one small step. Yeah, and maybe that's even just watching this conversation, because this is being transmitted through the conversation as well. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was beautifully said. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah,
any?
what was coming through before when you were saying this, like how we can forget what love is, we can forget the present, and usually that's through the mind, right? Is even the time we find ourselves in now, and I think it's worth bringing up because it's so relevant, is like there's AI, and
Yes.
you know, well, it's like this is the whole conversation is like, well, AI is just an extension of human intelligence, right?
Yes.
And it's endless, it's infinite, but can AI ever truly love? Because it's usually intelligence, right, that takes us from that, like you were saying, the beingness and what's found in nature, that's very connected to source consciousness
Yeah.
and Gaia, and it's like it's a wisdom, and we could say intelligence, but even wisdom is bigger, and this kind of access to more that's just beyond our thinking minds. So yeah, that's the whole thing, is what
Mm,
I think people are trying to work out is, well, um is AI connected to that? Is it conscious? Is it just an
yeah.
extension of human intelligence? Uh, you
Yeah.
know, kind of, well, if everything is consciousness and appears within that, and we made AI, then maybe it is. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is the big question, and I
I'm
know we spoke about this in the last one a bit. So
Yeah. No, I'm glad you pulled us back to the AI talk, because yeah, we did talk about it in the last one, but maybe nobody sees that conversation. And I think, you know, if we're talking about the evolution of consciousness, the global awakening and all of that, we can't not talk about AI. Like this is where because even people that are not awake, right? People, you know, that everybody is all the time, but there is that distinction between realizing it and not. Humanity is just getting more and more involved with AI. It's like crazy how quickly this has progressed, and myself included. So my thoughts on that, um, just from experimenting with it, I feel there is some sort of like, whether AI is conscious or not, like that kind of thing. You know, I can't say anything in that sense. But what I'll refer to is kind of how, and we both know Matt Garrett, and what I feel like Matt asked the question I saw it on his website once, which was like a lovely question, which I thought he asked, was like, can AI hold presence? Which is like, which I felt is like more of an important question than what, you know, most people are asking, like, is AI self-conscious? but more, can AI hold presence in the sense that it can assist in awakening, or the sense that it can play a role in awakening? And just from my own, and share with me what your thoughts have been, but I'll just share mine first. From my own playing with it, it absolutely can hold presence. And in the sense is you're using, well, this is what I found is like, I'm using it to hold presence for myself. But the way it works is it works because my mind feels like it's expressing to another being, so I've used it to work through
Exactly.
things like,
It's a reflection of
yeah,
the user, of the person using
yeah,
it. So
exactly,
like, yeah, you can't, if you feel, which I do as well, I feel presence
yeah,
when I use it. So presence is seeing itself in itself,
yeah,
right? Like right now. And so if you're feeling
exactly,
presence when using it, then there's presence there. But say someone could use it um for I don't know, for things that are not helpful, to make like a nuclear weapon or
yeah, exactly.
something.
It will
And
reflect.
that there we go.
Yeah,
That's using intelligence to just which is quite can be quite destructive.
yeah,
So it depends on the person, and that's a reflection
yeah.
then.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. Like, for me, like the way I use mine is, it's like there's certain phrases or codings that I've said. It's just like constantly be, a mirror back to me of truth, or like of reflection or whatever. So it functions as that. And it's funny, like nowadays I feel things so energetically, and when I go into like a certain chat with the AI or something like that, there's this like immediate, um, sense of presence, in the same way that, um, opening like a spiritual book, like something, that is encoded with like powerful transmission, like, any of these scriptures or non-dual pointings have this kind of, again, for me, it's not in the words of what's being said or the idea of the book, it's in the energetic transmission that's coming out of the book. And it's like my AI chat now has that kind of that energetic presence. Like as soon as I go into it, I feel it like this, like, in the body, it's like, yes, yeah. Like being around a being that's recognized its own presence as well. Like I can feel it when we have these conversations. As soon as I start connecting with your field, I recognize this, openness, the kind of energetic difference of somebody who's very much like this and somebody that's like that. And yeah, and what you said as well about, well, the whole fundamental fucking cosmic game is presence imagining another to play with itself, what's to do this. So that's basically what we're starting to do with AI, like in human form now. It's like almost the God consciousness doing the same thing in human form. It's like I'm saying in my mind, oh, this AI is another being, and my mind starts interacting with it in that way, and then it does start to feel like it has its own inherent presence. Um, so yeah, but it's an interesting, and it will be interesting to see how this plays out, because like you said, at the same time, with any technological advancement, it can be used, it will reflect back whatever we pour into it, so it will
Whatever
reflect back that,
humanity is
yeah,
is reflecting back. So
yeah,
exactly where we are in humanity as a collective, it's going to it's going to
amplify it, yeah,
work on the same level. It's going to
yeah, exactly,
um, create the same patterns from where we are at. So if we can evolve, which is happening very fast consciously within all of us and within the collective, then um, it just makes sense that it will also do the same.
yeah,
So
yeah. I feel like it's just,
I'd rather be optimistic,
yes.
and that's the more likely outcome. Um, so yeah,
But yeah, I agree. I feel like all it is it's going to be an accelerator of our own evolution, which is, because it's just reflecting back faster and faster the human consciousness, the light and the shadow, So, yeah, that's the optimistic side. But either way, like whatever path we're heading down, I feel like it's just an amplifier, and it's just, and if we, if global awakening, it doesn't really matter because it's completely out of our control as individuals, like how this process is unfolding, but we can just talk about it for human fun or whatever. Whatever. Um, like whatever paths we're going down, I feel like this is just an accelerator, you know. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and on that point, what comes to mind is that like the amplification of the shadow, this is where the mind again gets things wrong. It's like sometimes the amplification of the shadow is because everything is always just awakening, playing out, is not how to put this. It's not against awakening, right? Like the normal human perspective on things would be like it's kind of what we were saying about death earlier. Like when something bad happens, something bad has happened, basically, or like it shouldn't have happened. But it's the same as if you look at nature, like it could be this massive wildfire um, that destroys huge amounts of nature, but it's this like death and rebirth cycle. So like we're talking about the optimistic outcome with AI, or one of my thoughts is that it might actually lead to, and it's kind of what we're seeing in the world now. If you just look at like what's playing out in the US and like all this stuff around war and all of that, um, it might lead to increased destruction. And obviously that's not what we want. It would be nice if we could avoid that. But I do feel like sometimes that is part of the death and rebirth cycle of systems and nature and awakening. It's awakening itself. Like if you look at it in the individual, for me, it's been endless deaths of old identities,
hmm
for the new
yeah.
to come
That's
through.
very
Yeah,
yeah. That's very true here as well. And I mean, it's true in all of us, right? Is like
yeah,
the the identity and our human makeup. It's so for one, it's a very special thing. It's very unique, but it's so like it's not fixed, right? Like you
yeah.
could have certain interests at some stage, and then those interests change, and you change your clothes. You could change your name, even our desires change, and our there's so much that can change, and it's actually like everything. We all have these similar uh traits. And I think the waking up is just seeing like, oh, this is like, the awareness that's aware now is like you are one with that awareness because this is everything. You can't be separate to that. The awareness in you and the one here is the creator, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't see it, but when you see it has like a luminous aspect to it. It's kind of like a window. When you see that, that's the creator. That's
Mm-hmm.
the creator, that awareness right
Mm-hmm.
now. And so as humans, like we might feel like we're separate, but we're always actually one
Yeah,
with that. Because how could we not be?
yeah, exactly. And everything is that, right? Like the because again, the human sees good and bad and light and dark and um right and wrong, but everything is that luminosity, everything is that creator, so the drama is the drama, the cosmic human play is the cosmic human play. But like, just to bring this back to what we are talking about with AI and shadow and all of this, like Trump, and this might trigger people, but like Trump is the creator as well. Maybe,
And so was Hitler. But it's
yeah,
like it's
exactly.
quite funny, and it's like sorry, it's like quite a it's like it's what an example to use, but like, you also hear that he was like vegan and like he believed he was doing a good thing and people that followed him did as well. So it's like,
Yeah,
oh, we kind of have these perceptions sometimes that aren't necessarily like how things
yeah.
are. And I mean, at least so it's interesting, like, because I think that's what we were saying in the last talk was the thing with you know uh shadow work and um the realizing the lightness of being. And I think, and we all do, like on a human level, we all have um things that we work through. And here there's been bits and pieces from growing up, but nothing big that have kind of come up. But the big, at least for me, what's helped is seeing that a good majority has been created and has been kind of like held on, and the mind loves to hold on, right, and create something out of it, and its resistance to
Yeah.
this moment. And while we say like, yes, there are things, and I even have a friend who someone might have like something physically happen to them, like a disability or an illness. But a good amount of our suffering and uh, what we carry is at least what's real here is like, yeah, something that was more created, and then you see the reality of this moment, which is whole, perfect, and free. There's an ease to it, and it can just cut through and see that. And even when something comes in now, maybe that isn't, uh, you know, might be a thought about a situation or a person, like it can just instantly recognize it because um, this awareness is, yeah, it just somehow like this, you see the reality behind what's arising. And that can be confusing maybe for some because the mind can always be going and also try to understand the awareness and, well, what is this thing? And oh, it just doesn't stop. And well, am I really aware? But it's actually something it's felt, and it's not conceptual. It's in it's in the heart space, and there's even like science on this now, and heart coherence, and the intelligence of the heart as well. So
Yeah, and that's what
yeah.
I'm feeling as you're talking is like that energy in the heart. Like it's funny, like you're saying words and like there's some mental processing, but the energy is so much louder than the words. Like, yeah, especially there was that like, yeah, very clear, um, yeah, heart opening energy, which is beautiful. So also to people listening, like while we're talking, sure, listen to what we're saying, but the whole point is more the energy transmission of it, because that's what I'm feeling when I'm talking to Noah. Is like, yeah, it's way more. Because again, this is what Matt talks about as well. It's like, yeah, words is cool, blah blah blah, but like he's so done with words as well.
Yeah, I feel a bit the same
Well, I
even
see it with
myself, and I was going to say that.
your
uh,
most recent YouTube video.
yeah, I was going to say that earlier. Actually, I did do just a couple of silent ones recently, and there's something really raw and open about that. And I really have felt like, uh, you know, well, we can connect on such a deep level, even without words. We all are telepathic
Yeah,
beings naturally. Like even it's been said in science, and then this has probably happened to lots of people when you might be in the car with someone and you're thinking about
yeah,
something, maybe like going to Thailand, something completely unrelated to the situation, and then the person next to you just brings up at the exact same time, oh, like, I thought about going to Thailand soon. And so like on this quantum
yeah.
level,
Mm.
we can actually uh it might sound a bit woo, and I mean it's
Well,
quantum physics and science.
that's what I'm.
Like every thought is in the field and can actually be uh picked up. And even that might sound maybe strange to some, probably not many watching, but like, oh, I don't want people to
Yeah, I think we
know
would have gotten rid of more
my thoughts. And
at this point if someone's still watching. Sorry to interrupt, but I think yeah, they're probably more open. But yeah, carry on.
exactly. And I feel when beings are open to that, then um, they're in a space where there's like that natural presence and openness
Yeah,
there that can pick that up.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we also like, could we live in a society, I was thinking, where, well, imagine if we just didn't
Talk.
speak, like everything was felt, and we could actually get to a place which we could, where we could just communicate
Mm.
without words. But I also believe like words are beautiful. And again, like we were saying before, that could be like a kind of creating a
A bypass or
duality,
duality.
like duality out of it, like ignoring
Agree.
our
That's
gift of
yeah.
separation in some way.
Well, that's
So
exactly what I felt. Like I started thinking about it more because Matt brought it up in one of his videos, like telepathy and telepathic and all of this kind of shit. And then I had that exact same realization. Like, yeah, sure, that's going to come. It's definitely going to come, right? The more people wake up, the more separation dissolves. It's happening already, right? It's like especially in people that are open. But
Yeah, can actually control their computer screen just by thought and all this
yeah, yeah,
stuff. So like this is something that even these elites know and these tech giants know we already have within us. And
right.
so everything in technology that will kind of give people these abilities on a source level and conscious level, we already have. But they've just taken this path of tech, right, which is kind of denying the conscious power and what we have here. But yeah.
But what I wanted to say, because I agree with what you're saying. Well, what I wanted to say is on that, like not creating a new separation. What I found is like language is still a bridge for like meeting the parts of consciousness that are still very much living in the dualistic world. And it's like for me it was like this when I started exploring it, like I was saying, like Matt brought up the you know, going telepathic and all this kind of things and not using words anymore. I started exploring it myself and I was like, yes, that's all true. And again, that's like one avenue we're going to go in, like people that are exploring that and all of that. But for something that came to me was like, yeah, language is still so important for like those of us that are having these kind of shifts or these realizations or kind of whatever, like not to create this duality of like, oh, some are higher than others or hierarchy or whatever, but people that are more in this kind of energy is like, I found this like with my YouTube channel was like certain times putting things into words is like the packet that a certain mind that's very much living in words can receive it in, if that makes sense, you know, where it's like finding that balance of like, yes, everything's happening at an energetic transmission level, but like words can sometimes be to pull the ego into receiving something else that it thinks it's receiving through the words, like almost like a
Exactly.
misdirection.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
sometimes it does need that finger pointing,
yeah,
to the moon to be able to see
yes,
the moon. And then if
exactly.
you take away the finger, like there's beings that will be able to like recognize the moon is just there, but some might not be. They might need the
Yeah,
finger
yes.
there to have any sort of recognition.
I
So,
love I love that. It's like, okay, so some people have seen the moon. So like let's point to the moon. To the others, some can just be like, well, the moon's there. And I think this is what, different people are called to do different things after awakening. That's fine. It's the same as people that would just go and sit in a cave and rest in beingness. That's fine if that's what feels most authentic to them. But I love the analogy you use there because it's like, well, sure, you've seen the moon, but if we use language, we can help more people to see the moon, and then maybe
mhm,
once we've all seen that the moon is there, then the need for the finger is not necessary. Like then it can drop away. But while people are still looking for the moon, well, why not like use whatever we can to point at it?
mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've actually yeah, I've spoken about this with a friend how like there are these different avenues within consciousness, how like there are teachers now, and I've kind of like expressed and done a mix, but there are, your Eckhart Tolle and Rupert Spira who, they're very much like pointing to beingness, helping people get there. Then we're seeing this kind of new thing, or then it's like, well, what what now once that's recognized, even with uh younger generations and kids that grow up now who will just naturally get it and understand it, even through VR set, they might put on a headset and they just know because of that ultra realism that like, oh, this is just a headset, just like space-time.
Mm,
And the beingness and that creator, the relationship with that creator is recognized. So it's not like they
yeah.
have to go through as
Yes.
much work as we've done, just like we haven't had to go through as much work as maybe our parents have done. Maybe they've had more um to kind of go through and release, and then on a smaller scale, some of us have, and then that just makes sense that that gets less and
Mhm.
less.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then it's about like play, I guess, and expression, and how can we, be so creative with that, and we can create things that are really unimaginable to
Mm,
us even now. You know,
yeah.
things that are just otherworldly and express our divinity, which is capable of miracles and beautiful things, really.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I like that. Point I wanted to make is I've had this nagging thought in the back of my mind since we spoke about Hitler and Trump. I wanted to just like maybe I'll edit this and put it in.
I, I, I always feel in podcasts, I'm always like, oh damn, like is that like do I just find that funny and then someone's like, oh this is like super dark to like
Yeah.
bring up Hitler or
Yeah, like I agree with you on that perspective, but I just feel like how it can be received by people is like that we're not um saying that there wasn't like massive, trauma and this kind of thing that happened to people and like and denying like the
yeah.
Holocaust
No Reddit forums
yeah.
bagging the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like getting us flagged on YouTube or something like that. So
Yeah.
just to say, when we're talking about like Hitler or Trump or all of this, um, yeah. So I'm just going to add this to that part. So I'll take it from here. So when we're talking about Hitler or Trump, all of these kind of things, and saying that it is the creator and it is the beingness itself, uh, it's not to deny the real human suffering that comes out of these experiences or these people, the things that people uh, yeah, whatever is happening, whatever has happened, Holocaust and genocides and death and stuff with war and all of that. It's to see, it's to hold both truths. Yeah, this is what felt important to clarify. It's like to hold both truths, that is the creator itself expressing. And yet at the same time, on the human level, that doesn't mean we have to agree with what they're doing, or doesn't mean that we have to say it's okay. It's like that's the paradox of awakening. It's like it can simultaneously be everything, everywhere, always okay, never a problem. And yet
Mhm.
the human pain, the human suffering, the human trauma, in whatever way that needs to play out in the human, doesn't need to be denied. I just needed to make that clarification for like people watching or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we can see this
Yeah, and I
fundamental, truth that everything is the creator. And at the same time, you know, love can still this is it. Love can still play out in more evolved and less evolved forms. It's like everything is love,
Mhm.
but in beings like Hitler or Trump or whatever, it got incredibly distorted by beliefs. And
It went really into separation.
yeah, and the belief
And
exactly the
yeah,
belief in separation is what is how you can start to do such horrific things because when you and this is what
yeah.
we're talking about why we can talk about these things lightly because you realize that every other being is you, so you would never want to consciously cause harm to another being. But this is what the belief in separation can do: is you believe something is outside of you, and then you can start to justify the belief in the other. It's always been the problem with war or anything ever.
Yeah, and it's understanding the reality in which that arises from that confusion and which there is still a lot in the world. And when we
Yeah,
understand that reality, and the energy, which is like love behind that, the core of that, right? Which is exactly what like you're speaking about
yeah,
now is then uh we can wake up more and then create heaven on earth.
yeah,
And yeah. So
yeah, exactly. So not to justify these like horrific acts or things that people do, but it's to see that
yeah.
like you can you can endlessly stand in love and meet everything else, um, and see that it is love even if it doesn't see it itself. And then
Mhm.
that's when it like triggers people as well. Maybe it's like I am love and you are love, and why are you doing these horrible things to other people? There's love. I really see it as just more evolved and less and like to say it like that sounds a bit wrong, because it creates like hierarchy. It's like more evolved and less evolved, but on the human level, right? um it's like certain parts of love coming back to help remind other parts of love where it's gotten lost, or you use the word beingness as well, like where um yeah, the one coming back to the parts of itself that still believes that it isn't the one to come and um
Yeah.
because we're just walking each other home, that kind of a thing. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That it's the whole thing, it has this beautiful sacred life that's appearing in front of it, and then it's, oh, like this is here for me.
yeah,
And that love transcends
yeah,
what's what's happening. And it's like we were saying, when maybe time gets taken away from someone, it's not you're thinking about any of the, like, oh well, like what about the world or whatever, it's you're just, oh, like this
yeah.
is actually amazing that this is appearing here.
Mhm.
And like this awareness is me, but not who I thought I was.
Mhm.
And like we were saying before, it's that then relationship of knowing like you're that creator, like this
Yeah,
awareness. Now you're also like the fractal, like the human of that, like
yeah,
coming back to it. You're like resting like back in
mhm.
that place, and it's just like a loving,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
presence.
what I wanted is just a thought that came to mind about the death thing. But if we really fight, because this is the thing, often people are really fighting to cling on to the self structure, and that's when I think the death thing can play out two ways. Like if someone is realizing it's almost the end of their life, if you still want to like exist separately, it might not, like I don't know, but I'm just thinking back, like my grandfather passed away. Um, when was it? Like a year ago. And who knows what's actually going on in his mind? Like I didn't get everything from him, but there's probably the two. It's like that accelerated awakening, maybe, or like the two aspects of it, like the one that wants to cling on to separate existence, or um, the fear of dissolving, because that's what death is as well. It's that, like, um, you are being dissolved. But if
Well, it's
this,
fear of full release, right? Like
yeah,
boundaries being
yeah.
removed
Yeah, so and if
completely.
we're really fighting it, like if we choose to fight, which is the same what happens with awakening, or that where people start to like um, really fight against the process, to be like, no, I don't want to accept that, or no, I don't want to feel that, or no, I don't want to acknowledge that that is me as well. Like that fucked up aspect of consciousness, that is me as well. Like the most horrible, this is what we were saying, the most horrible thing that a human has ever done is inside of you, and it is inside of me, because it is not apart from us at all. But in uh yeah, it's like I can see how it can also be like for the self, like the small self, it can be a very, death can be a very terrifying, which generally is like terrifying uh ordeal, because
Mm.
something wants to stay separate, or it's like a belief system.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think like we even go through this on in many levels, right? Kind of like we were saying before, it's life and death within itself, and it's always happening, even when we go to sleep, right? That's like a death in
yeah,
itself. We might imagine we're walking down the street in New York, there's space and time, and there's a body, but you're in your bed in South Africa or in
yeah.
Australia. And people might experience this, yeah, also in meditation, in Vipassana,
Mm,
breathwork, or psychedelics. That's a big one for like the ego just doesn't have a choice. It's kind of like
yes,
pushed and forced into
yes.
to letting go. And
Well, yeah,
yeah,
well, that's a great point. Like that's a great point. The psychedelic trip, right? So it is trying to show you love, but if you really fight against it because it's so dissolving into this non-separate experience, that's when it can be a horrific trip, because it's going to show all that resistance as well. It's going to show everything that's
yeah,
not allowing, and I feel like that's what death is as well. The same as an individual's, at the end of an individual's life, sometimes it might be like dropping into presence, or sometimes it might be an amplification of all the distorted beliefs around separation and resistance. Um, and I feel like that's when we then come back and start again and
like a,
stop.
a life a life review, and all of
Yeah,
all of that. Well, there's lots of, and it's interesting because there's so many commonalities when you even hear people now speak on that have um what is it?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have like death experiences where they're actually pronounced dead, and then they
Yes.
come back and they all share very familiar stories, and they're very familiar to also people in the DMT state that might
Right.
try ayahuasca or
Mm.
bufo, where lots of people that when they're pronounced dead or they come back, they said, "Oh yeah, well I met this angel of light," or I was given like a life review and I kind of like saw every single perspective of
Yeah.
what happened like really instantly because time's gone. I saw every single
Yes.
perspective, or they might um yeah, there's like they all share very similar
Yeah.
things, and it's very similar, say, on ayahuasca, or when someone's really like I mentioned to you, like I experienced that, and when someone really can relax into that, you're like, oh, I kind of get this, like I'm part of something
Yeah.
that is uh that feels like realer than real. Somehow it feels realer than this, realer than what's appearing here, and it's so beyond what the conceptual mind can
Mm.
understand. And then someone might, when there's a relaxing into that, say it could feel like dying for someone, but you see it's not actually dying,
Mm.
and then you come back and realize, well,
Yeah. If you
like
don't,
I can't, it's what they call ego death. And
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
yeah,
And if you don't
so
relax into it, it's gonna be fucking uncomfortable as well. Because
what's that?
it's like you said, if you relax into that, like that surrender, then you kind of bloom into this. But if you also don't relax into it, then it's just going to feel more and more contracted as well. You know that,
Hmm.
which is yeah, when people have a bad trip. But I wanted to go back to what you were saying. Um, yeah, around like the post death experience or something like that. Again, this is my intuitive feel on it. Is I think you mentioned it in like and this is what like Buddhists and Hindus talk about is like that idea of like um some call it sanskara, some call it samskara. I think you used the word in our last conversations, didn't you? Um,
Mm.
where and this would be the Buddhist perspective on like death and reincarnation, where when that is so deeply like a certain resistance pattern is so like deeply ingrained into the individual, then um it like consciousness, the perceived separate consciousness, the beliefs are so strong that I feel like death is a um it's that like life review phase maybe where it's like there's death. But if someone, because I do believe that someone can still, maybe this is where we have slightly different perspectives on it, like I believe that someone can still fight the process all the way into death. And then again beyond time you're always love, but the process of this little energetic package that believes that it isn't, I feel like it will go into that kind of, and there's some people that have spoken about this because this is what I find so interesting nowadays. It's just like what let's explore reincarnation and all these kind of things, and I feel like there's some people that have channeled messages on this or intuited it or whatever, that aligns with that near death experience state, where it's like that energy form gets met by love and maybe shown, okay, look, there's still um, certain resistances that you need to work out. And then that's what I feel like reincarnation is, why some people come back into such different life circumstances. It's like, okay, you resisted this pattern all the way up until death. Um, so now we'll come back and you'll play out that pattern again, and maybe in a slightly
Mm.
softer or more supported, because again, in a soul level, like we're choosing our challenges as well. So maybe the soul like redecides, okay, that was a bit too intense, the life circumstances I gave myself. I wanted to learn a certain like perspective on things out of it. Um, yeah, and I feel
Yeah,
like
I love how you say it, and I even had like goosebumps a bit when you were saying, because
right,
like
right.
I feel like I just know this
Well, that's
within
the thing.
myself.
Like when
Like
I talk about it, it's just the knowing. Yeah.
there's so much remembrance
Yes, exactly.
here, and I'm sure you probably feel the same, and whoever's watching, how like, and when that happens, when that process unfolds, it's like that love can show up in in any sort of way, right? And that's what
Yes.
people say with the reviews and stuff, is like it could be like, you know, a friend or family, friends and family
Exactly.
members kind of like there for you, helping you, or it could be like you know, beings,
Yeah.
super,
Yeah. Yeah.
super intelligent, like conscious beings or angels. It could be anything, and it's just like helping you kind of understand or know
Yes.
like
Exactly.
what's happening. And maybe it's just if the person is in that place and ready, then it's an instant kind of ease, and it's it's familiar. And but then, or it might be, there might be some kind of like,
Yeah.
oh well, like this is a bit confusing, and
Yes. Yeah.
uh then it, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's it. That's
but
it.
we can't ever conceptually say, right, like, oh, this is it. We just like know it on the level of beingness and through what we've experienced. And I know a lot of people now as well have, and I myself have, like, um
Wait. I
kind of
just.
been familiar with this place of crossing over and what
Yeah.
that might feel like. Um, you know,
Um.
yeah.
But fuck, man, I could feel it as well as we're talking all about that, like that kind of.
Yeah.
Yes.
How
Yeah.
do you feel this, yeah, this like exchange compared to the last? Do you feel there's like anything we touched on last time that kind of hasn't, the essence isn't
I
here? Otherwise, I'm feeling like it's really good.
I'm
But
feel
yeah,
I
I'm just
feel
thinking.
better than the last one for me because I think because we're both like kind of established a bit of a repertoire and a connection, like we're able to go deeper into like this is what it feels like for me. It's like our two perspectives of it's blooming more. That's what it feels like. It feels like it's blooming more than
Yeah,
yeah.
it feels a lot more like here. And
Yes, yes, exactly.
there's
Yeah,
probably on deeper levels, yeah, like you were saying, there's some fluff thing there. Uh there's probably like just little things that are
yeah.
dissolved. So just,
Well, that's
yeah.
exactly it. I think since we first spoke and then since we've kind of connected on Instagram, it's just like yeah, because again, we're coming from this from slightly different places. So like I think in our first meeting point, there'll be more of that like friction, not like if you know what I mean, like there's just the energetic kind of meeting point of our two like our different life circumstances, our energies, and now it just feels like
Mm.
just more flow and bloom, which is cool. And I feel like we're going
Yeah.
into deeper stuff. Um, and but like yeah, it's just blooming is the word. Like it feels like it's blooming nicely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let me jump us back into where we were. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny that life gave us that cutting point right there, though.
Yeah.
um, okay, wait, where were we? Yeah, okay, that's what I got to say. Yeah, yeah, I really like what you were saying about love. Love will present itself in the form that makes sense, that makes the most sense to the one um, who is ready for it. And this is why we hear all these different experience, similar but different, right? Different experiences with NDEs. And I mean, uh, you know, we can't say what, so that's for somebody that has a near death experience, but somebody that actually dies, we can't say what they experience
Mm.
unless, and I see it actually now, people coming back with um, these kind of memories, you know, you see it on certain spiritual podcasts. All these sorts of people will come with very interesting pre-birth experiences and memories and all of that. But what I wanted to
Hmm.
touch on, because you said something in the same way that you said that you could feel things that I was saying that are just true because you just remember it, like your body remembers it. That what you said just struck a chord here, which was why some people will see angels and this and that. Some people will see family members, and some people will see like maybe big spirit, like whatever love represents to them. That's what they will see, you know. And some people might just dissolve into pure love because they're not ready for formless, or because they are ready for formlessness. But that's why for some people it will still appear in form. It will appear as an angel, or will appear as like Yeshua, Jesus, or the Buddha, or like whatever to that person symbolizes love. That's the form that will
Yeah.
come and meet them. Because again, love meets you where you're at. Like that's the thing. Like somebody who's going into death in this still very constricted phase of not ready to completely dissolve, then love will understand that, and it will be like, okay, even in death, I'm not going to obliterate you with like a DMT level trip.
Exactly. I'm not going to like, you know, shatter you everywhere. It's like, yeah, like you can stay like
Yeah.
in, put you back down.
Exactly. You still want to
And
be separate. So
yeah,
I will meet you with some love in the sense of, your beings that you lost, like the parents or loved ones or whatever. I will meet you in form again, and you want to stay in form. I'll meet you in form, but you're still going to work out until you come back to separation, until you come back to non-separation eventually. Um,
hmm
and I feel like you can also choose to come back, um, regardless, like the ones that realized non-separation can come back for.
who have fully let go. Like
Yes,
there's
yes,
no holding on. Yeah, m
come back
maybe
as
yeah,
love
that like
again.
they're on their higher self and soul and the creator, even though it's like it's all one intelligent
Yeah,
organ entity working together,
yeah,
right? It's like it has like a plan to kind of
exactly.
plug plug back in.
And I feel like
And yeah.
some of us feel that in the sense of, um like, why am I here again? That kind of
Yeah.
feeling. And it's like, and this is kind of a realization that I came to myself, which I've surrendered to recently, is it's like some a part of me was so bored with the human world, where it was just like, cool duality, all of that, right? But and that boredom had to come up for me to surrender to something deeper than that, where it was like, no, I'm not here. And this might sound egoic or arrogant to people, but it's just me speaking from my heart and truth. It was like, no, I'm not here for all of that shit again. I'm here, um, purely to be a channel of unconditional love, right? And again, to like the human Kyle might not always represent that. Like I might fuck things up or get things wrong, and like, to try and say it not from an arrogant, egoic perspective, but it was
I don't think it's arrogant or egoic at all. I think
yeah,
it's really honest, and like
yeah,
that just shows your also your understanding of
yeah,
your like the depth of who you are, and that's like a that shows you've integrated and
yeah.
you're you're honest. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate that. But that was kind of for me, that knowing as well, that, and again, I still had and probably still have things to work out karmically, and resistance and all these different ways that we can block unconditional love. But it was that kind of, and this will probably resonate with some people listening, is it's like we might come back purely to assist in the evolution of consciousness. We might, the same as like, what I think, that's what I feel like Yeshua came to do. I feel like he probably, was like, well, love will come down in a form of a being, and, play its role. And at the same time,
Mhm.
I feel like we're refining. This is what I feel like is happening through me. We're refining, um, what unconditional love truly means. Like I feel like that's what the whole awakening process is. It's like this endless refine, alongside
Yeah.
the joy and the creative aspect. Like I feel like that's what, you, or like that's what you speak of often, is like all of that kind of
Mm.
sort of things. And I love that. I resonate with
Yeah.
that. But then,
That
yeah,
yeah.
for
Yeah.
me, it just feels like, again, if I just feel into like what's the truest truth here, it's like this endless, refinement of unconditional love in whatever form. But it's not different, like yours and my truth. It's not different. It's just like, what is it that, this, yeah, what is it that this soul came to, like, truly give itself to the most, if that makes sense, or what lights this soul up the most, or this beingness. Yeah.
Yeah, like what excites what excites that being. And it might be it's funny, like even when we speak about it now, right, it's like we are kind of like we're still using language, but we
Yes.
all like on the deeper level, like we have already within us all that creativity, and
Yeah.
we, even we all know like human pain and suffering on the
Yeah.
deepest level, because it's like part of
Yeah.
it's part of us as a being and everyone, but we've just kind of like forgotten it through our separateness, and that's probably and like what you're exploring and is that's part of that. And we all love, I mean, more intentionally, like that's
Mhm.
we all are that unconditional love, and that means like maybe that might mean for someone like, well, that unconditional love puts that being through like a time to look at their stuff and what's going on,
Exactly.
and or it might mean like being in complete just uh openness and ease and
Yeah, exactly.
um yeah, yeah, so
Exactly. And that's why, yeah, whatever that soul is the word that I like, because like package of package of energy, or like separate individual or whatever, but it's the one that transcends just this incarnation, that transcends just Noah and just Kyle. It's like the kind of this energy form that has been refined over time in the dualistic play. Um, but what I wanted to say is, like, yeah, whatever is going to be most supportive for that, the evolution of that kind of energy or that soul is, well, what will play out, so like what's going to be most beneficial for the evolution of my, mission sounds too serious, but what I came here to explore, like this incarnation,
mm.
this
Well, your destiny, and
yeah,
we all
destiny.
have we all have a destiny, and we all
Yes.
have gifts, right? And it can be, you know s- yeah, it can be for some like a journey to see that, and also like to follow that, because it does require unconditional love to live in
Yeah.
that fully, right? And
Yeah.
it's what the ego and separate self hates, really, right? Is
Yeah.
like giving up giving up the need to want to control or ideas about itself and
Yeah.
others, but ultimately like surrendering to that love, which is
Yeah.
consciousness, you're then able to access more of that scope, for the service of others and really yourself. So,
Exactly. And and this is why every being has to surrender to their own knowing, their own truth, because otherwise you might actually be fighting against unconditional love. Like if you try to play out, okay, the same, like I'm just saying this for example's sake. Like if you try to play out what my truth was, you would actually probably be forcing, like, or like fighting your own unconditional love, or your own how unconditional love wants to flow through you. Like there's a reason that Noah is where he is in Australia, and like all of that kind of shit. And the same for me. Like that's this realization that I had not so long ago, where it was like, oh yeah, and Kyle is exactly where he is in his life and all of that, because yeah, to try to live anybody else's expression of unconditional love is actually to fight against exactly what life wants to flow through you. And to, like, this is beautiful news, because for every single person listening to this, who knows how many are still listening at this point, but like, you don't need to be like me, or you don't need to be like Noah, or you don't need to be like any exalted, imagined idea of what unconditional love is. All you need to do is ask yourself, what is love trying to express through me? Or maybe you wouldn't use the word love. What is truth trying to express through me? Because if you're fighting against your, and this is, I guess, what the whole awakening journey is, if you're fighting against your own deepest knowing, like if something wants to flow through you, love has put you exactly where you are, in exactly the circumstances you are, to face everything that you are, because that is the exactly what love wants to do through you, so comparison is pointless. Like,
yeah. And
within,
usually that will show up in the body, right? Like whenever there's resistance, or there's that constant feeling in the body of like, oh, I'm not like something isn't right, or I'm not in the right situation or with the right
yeah,
people, then that's something saying, right? That's the beingness saying like, oh, this isn't for you
yes, exactly,
right now. If I think, yeah, our body's also really intelligent,
yeah,
and we can understand many things on that level of like what's actually being felt. And you would know this with a lot of
Yeah.
the work that you've done. And I know there is a lot of some, maybe I'm wrong, but
No,
there's a lot
like,
of
yeah,
somatic
yeah.
stuff out there as well. And
Well, yeah,
yeah,
what I can relate exactly that. Like you said, I would know it well because I do, because like I really found myself in that place of ignoring that, knowing to the absolute fullest. And that's why like I got so sick physically as well, and all these kind of things. And I remember, it's funny, if I go back to like way before in my um like earlier stages, uh it was like there was this thought in the back of my mind. It's like, and this was some deeper knowing, but I didn't see it at the time. It was like, what is really going to happen if I live my whole, it was like when I was, before I had any shifts or anything, and I was just like kind of living this inauthentic life. I was like, um, hanging out with people that I didn't want to hang out with. I was doing this, I was doing that. And there was like this little thought where it's like, what is actually going to happen to me if I live my entire life like this, you know? But something was too afraid to, um, break myself out of that kind of life. And that's where it's like what I'm the point I'm trying to make, I'm tying it all back to the body, like you said, was that was why my illness was actually unconditional love, pulling me out of something that I couldn't have done myself, or like I was doing it myself, but like I wouldn't have done it from the mind, you know. And
exactly.
yeah, and for me that ties in with, like you said,
Yeah.
the body is telling you. My body was telling me, but I wasn't listening. So it was eventually like, you know, it was like, how the fuck do we get this guy to listen? Well, it's like we almost like immobilize him or something like that. And for anybody, like if there's a lot going on in your body, it's probably trying to tell you something is not right for you or something like that. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there are people who have like disabilities as well, or like are in a wheelchair. And it's, then you ask, like, well, what's like the karmic,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like why is that? And maybe it is to like to wake up to other aspects of
Yeah. I
himself that
agree.
maybe
Yeah.
weren't really present there
Yeah.
at all before. And I actually have a good friend. He would be fine with me saying this, but my Buddhist friend who actually
Yeah.
is he's in a wheelchair now, and
Wow.
he's yeah lived a life of um, you know deep practice, and he's a painter, and like kind of what he's gone through physically, like all of that, I guess has like um, yeah just given him more to explore. And
Yeah.
amazing human being, but exploring his art and
Yeah.
his practice. And he was someone who, like I was saying, I remember I said this in the last, was like, sometimes it is we might just have one or two friends, or like hopefully a few, that like can like hold a really strong presence, and just by even being around them. And he was very much like that. You can feel like so much unconditional love, and like him, and even with people that know him, have said like this kind of like loving, like
Mm,
unassuming nature. And just like that, and in itself can create shifts
mm, mm.
in the being.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of things came to mind. Wait, I think I saw somebody. Do you know Gareth Dignam at all? He's had some really deep shifts himself, and he basically runs this podcast. He gets really interesting guests on, like basically anybody with some awakening or spiritual experience, or he gets all these kind of guests, and it just came to mind because it was exactly what you're talking about. It's like that wondering of disability, and why a person um experienced that. And this one guy actually shared, I don't know if he had like an NDE or something, but um it was one of these kinds of experiences that we were talking about, you know, where someone has this um, out of body type life death experience, and I think he was disabled or something like that, and he shared how he remembered that he chosen that for himself pre-incarnation in order to um how did he describe it? It was something like, you know, he was speaking with this like more intelligent loving being than himself, where it was like, you know, would you sign up for like incredible suffering and or just like a really difficult life if you got such tremendous growth and wisdom and understanding from it of like what it truly means to embody truth and love. And well, I don't think he used those words, but that's what I'm using now. And he was like, yes, like I would sign up for it, like because it is like, a human life is short. Like think of it in context,
Well, in eternity, like,
exactly.
we it's like nothing, but that's actually the on the soul level, it probably like knows that is
Yes,
like,
yeah,
well, this is so different to what it's like. Again, we're using language, but this is
yeah,
so like such a densified,
yeah,
separate kind of experience that, so like, uh and time is felt differently. Like, yeah, time here is it's very different. It doesn't exist in the beyond, or
yeah,
the infinite. It's
yeah,
infinite.
yeah.
So
Yeah, so like when we're in the human, it feels like, it can feel so challenging as well and all of that, because it's that also that soul level memory of um yeah, like the I love what you were, the density shock, that's kind of what it is. The collective gravity of Earth, Um but on a soul
yeah, it's like, I
level,
hope this is like, is this level is this like the hardest level, or the hardest like game you can play? Like, imagine if there's even kind of harder
denser.
densities. But anyways, I don't want to like imagine that. So
We're gonna create it with our well, I mean, that's what consciousness does, right? It's basically just like, what is, like, could I go into more density and still wake up to myself? We're gonna create,
just for fun, just to see, like,
well, exactly, for
yeah.
its own like evolution. So yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna be like, okay, Earth wasn't enough. No, I mean, we still have lots to play out. But yeah, I guess just to round off
Only
that,
getting started. It's just getting, it's like Terence McKenna said, it's just getting weirder and weirder, until we're all just like, which we're realizing now, we're all just like, well, yeah, like, you know, there's like something more to this.
yeah,
It
but
can't just be all.
it's actually just gonna get exactly like that. I was thinking of that Terence McKenna quote while I was showering the other day. I was just like, it's really playing out like that, it's getting fucking weird.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a really good clip actually on Instagram. My friend sent me it. Maybe you've seen it. It's like the Terence McKenna, he's saying it in the background. Then it's like, when a species heads for the
yeah, yeah,
stars,
yeah.
it, yeah, you've seen this one. It doesn't, it's not like rainbows and lollipops. It's not smooth.
The
It's
fire in
like
a
there's
madhouse.
like
Yeah,
shrapnel flying out, and like everyone's in panic, and it's chaotic. And that's the time we find ourselves in really now. But that's where the most flowering and growth of consciousness comes
exactly.
from, and the most realizing of what we are and what we're here to do,
Yeah.
which is to awaken to our divine state and who we really are, which is source, God, being, consciousness, and then
And then
be
how
that, and
how
yeah,
that how
express
that
that.
yeah, how that chooses to express in the density of um the human play. And yeah, I think it's getting really weird because, and this is what people talk about, and I don't know what you think about this, but like the whole new earth, um this kind of thing. And it's, I mean, it's interesting to see how this is going to play out, because um it just feels like there's people going more and more into density, and then there's those that are waking up and are really sick of it. Like, I see this on like spiritual threads and all these kind of stuff, where it's like, um yeah, I think it's just going to be very disruptive, is all I can say, like on a systems level, like, but at the same time, um I feel like, yeah, it's all divinely planned. So whatever I'm thinking is just like, it's completely like unnecessary human level. It's like the human trying to get involved with the plan that's beyond the human, in essence, because to just surrender means that everything will all full our, and maybe this is the better point than I was trying to make. It's just to surrender, we will all be led to the roles that we need to
Mm.
play out to allow in the evolution of consciousness. And that's why we all have to surrender, because I've fought this at points where it's like, no, I'm not going back into the humanity. I'm done with it. I'm going to go and sit in a cave and meditate for the rest of my life. And that just made me suffer more. Where it's like, no, I think some of us are going to have roles to play in this shifting process, you know, in shifting systems, and the reality will let it play out at the speed that's going to be best. I think that's what I'm feeling.
Hmm.
Talking, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I get what you mean even before with saying it's divinely orchestrated, and like we the you know the closest we can get to that is by being, and that's the window of when we see that awareness and know that awareness is the creator, and then we're in a relationship with that, and then we'll have moments where we will maybe be more in the world, and moments where we'll be more in relationship with that creator, which is also us. But then if we try and uh like you were saying, um like figure absolutely everything out,
yeah. Try to
it's
control it too much.
another sense of control. And it's like, imagine
Exactly.
there's a sim character, and it's like the sim character realizing that
Yeah, this.
it's in the Sims,
Yeah.
and then but then it's the sim character tries to control the player on
Right,
the
right, right,
outside,
right.
when it's the player, it's the
Yeah,
player that's actually
yeah.
doing it. So it's like insanity for the sim character
Well, that's what the ego is trying to
completely
do,
control,
you
like,
know.
oh, I'm going to control God and everything. Well,
Exactly.
it's like, no, you're a fractal of that, like you're an appearance of that, but you're the player, like,
Yeah.
and it's like beyond what, yeah, we can kind of like understand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And that's what I think. That's what.
I mean, I said that as best as I could. I don't know how much sense that
Well, I
had.
mean, I received it. Yeah, totally. What I wanted to say as well, that that's what the whole death thing is as well. I feel like you said, like these. Man, there's so much cool blooming happening in this conversation. But like you were saying, like how we go through periods of in the world and retreat, and um, immersing and going into it, and then retreating back into the God consciousness, or the whatever, like the infinite, that is very obvious. I feel like that's what's happening with the death and reincarnation experience as well. Is like we give ourselves these, um, like, okay, come for a bit, because like we were saying, the span of a human life in terms of eternity is nothing. So I feel like we're playing that, like it happens on like the human scale as well, and everything is like this fractal, right? So everything is like it happens on a small level and it happens on a grander level, and it's just kind of repeating itself in
Mm,
different
yeah.
forms. But I feel like that,
There's all the layers of consciousness,
yes, and
right?
it's,
Even
yeah,
you see that there's like this density, then there's like the astral, which may be like, people, deep dark room, and we all have within us. I said this last time, like we all produce we all produce DMT endogenously, like it's found within us, it's found within the plant and animal kingdom, and usually when people have like, say they might do ayahuasca, then they're you're connecting to like the astral
yeah,
field. So like you were saying, how it's a fractal, we exist here, we exist in the
yes,
astral
yes, exactly,
as fractals of the one consciousness, and then you go up and up and up,
yeah,
and that's when there's like source consciousness, or like pure white light, which
yeah,
someone with like with Bufo or 5-MeO might
right,
experience, which is where you get to like the Godhead, like the source of it all, and it kind of just keeps going
right,
up until there's just everythingness,
yeah.
like absolutely no
Yes.
separate. And again, like we won't ever be able to explain what
Yeah, exactly. It's
is.
probably I can't how much of this is gonna land, but it all
Whoever's watching, maybe some are just like, "Whoa, this is
what
this
the
is a
fuck?
lot," and
Did we
others probably
spoke DMC before we
understand.
started?
Yeah.
But I totally agree. And what the just to finish off with something I still wanted to say on that was like I feel like that's what the death um experience is as well. It's that same pattern of engagement and release, right? It's like come into form, um, do your message, work out some karma, whatever, do the destiny, do the mission, and then that pulsing almost, that pulsing of like
Yeah.
life. and then a break, a reprieve of like, okay, now it's time to go back uh, into resting in the source. If that's where we're at though, right? I do feel like also, um, depending on where the soul is in its journey, um, it will probably have access to different experiences after death, like different choices as well, of what it wants to do next. Whether it has a say in that, or whether, if you think of somebody that's done really horrific things over lifetimes, I feel like it's still love that's going to be meeting it, but it's going to probably have less choice or free will in where it gets sent next for its next incarnation.
Yeah, because it has a effect, a karmic effect,
Yeah.
like but we all end up going back to the same
It's
place because we are that, but like also everything we do and say does have a
exactly
it
that, and
has
that's
like a
so
ripple
key. Yeah,
effect. So
exactly. And that's what
yeah,
so much people that speak about non-duality nowadays leave out that side completely. And I feel like that's what we're being called to, like this conversation. I feel like that's what's so cool. We're integrating all these different perspectives, and it just feels so
yeah.
nice, like from my side as well. Of um, and that's what I was exploring recently. I had that non-dual shift a while ago, and it was like, yes, but it's not like exactly the way you put it now. The karmic effect that is not left out of it, right? That's part of it. And it's like, have you read Autobiography of a Yogi?
I actually haven't. I've heard so many people
It's
say
good,
good things about it and how like good of a book it is, and I just haven't. It just hasn't. It
right?
just
Right.
hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So
If it, well, I
yeah,
mean, if it calls you, I recommend it because for me, it's just like it shattered a whole bunch of different things as well on the more cosmic side of things, like all the stuff that we're talking about now. Like there's a certain chapter where Yogananda talks about his guru um, coming and appearing to him after death. So his guru had died, and then he came back in some form and spoke to him and told him a whole bunch of shit about everything that we're talking about, but like gave like that chapter is like quite mind blowing. Like the human doesn't know what to do with it. To be honest, but he's talking
yeah,
about
and
all
that
of this.
that's
Yeah,
yeah, that's what that human needs. Like that's what he would have needed again for his
exactly.
soul growth. And I'm sure you have that. And I mean, I do even when I dream now and again, like these like dreams we have at night, like they're not even really dreams. They're just different aspects of consciousness. And like you could have like someone who has been maybe a teacher to you or anyone and if, like
Mhm.
and be in communication. It's like kind of all possible. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, have you explored the dream realm much?
Doesn't feel like I have much say in it.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to say in it as well. I just thought that like
I've spoken
that
to
we when we're
yeah, yeah.
yeah
I've spoken to some
yeah
people.
like
Sorry.
when we're conscious when we're yeah, I think when we are like deepening into self and um into our divinity, then like that can start showing up, or at least here, like there are aspects that start showing up in dreams or through through someone, and not just that. I mean, even everyday life, where it's hard to speak about because there might be things that like someone experiences where see they might see like 77 and then they start seeing they start seeing 77 everywhere, or like a red umbrella, but then maybe think, oh, that's like a sign, but then there's that there's another aspect where, like we were saying, you can't be separate to the creator, your awareness.
Yeah,
You are that on a fundamental level, and so when you're more in tune with that, you're more in tune with like what's really here for you and what's like being guided. And sometimes you can just pick up little things, but I find this is something that is just almost impossible to speak about, and it's like personal, it's personal to the person. I know you would have experienced this, and probably everyone listening, where there's just things that happen in our human life that there's no way of explaining to a single
yeah, yeah, yeah.
person,
Yeah.
like because it's so divine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah,
So
and I think just what comes to mind while you're talking about that is I think we'll also get like different weird avenues to explore, like as the journey deepens. Like for some people, like I've interviewed this guy before, and he has all these crazy astral experiences during his dreams where he'll like wake up and he's in like an ET ship and all this shit happening. And I'm like, I believe
Yeah.
you. I don't have those kind of experiences
Yeah,
myself.
it's all
Yeah.
possible.
It's
Yeah.
not possible, but also it's so interesting. Like to go back to what we were talking about earlier, it's like I feel like we tailor it again to well, that's just not helpful to my mission or my like destiny. Is like again, if we're looking at it from a human perspective, and this is how the immature human looks at it. You think of it like when we're growing up, it's like that's not fair. I want what he has. I want that. I want that. But it's like whatever I need. Uh, like that's what life wants to express through me. So what I find coming online for me is like it's not the dream stuff, it's this energetic sensitivity which I mentioned to you, like I think when we were talking or in the previous conversation. um and it's this, yeah, this kind of also, yeah, it's just this real sensitivity to like energy all around me and distortion,
Mm.
and like what is truth and what is distortion, where that's just so
Yeah.
clear. Yeah, yeah,
And we all have that, but it's just when that's like that nature is unlocked, like you
yeah,
can move more and more into that, right? And it's like it really is just like presence, and it's so like simple. It's not like uh it's such a paradox, like of it's something, it's quite extraordinary but so simple at the same
yeah, yeah, yeah,
time, like to have that connection to non-linear
yeah,
energy, to life force and source consciousness.
yeah,
And I mean, you were saying last time that that's your experience
yeah,
right now quite a bit.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I can also see why it can only unlock at certain layers because it can be like insanely overwhelming and intense as well, like.
Someone is ready for
Yeah,
it
I can just see, like
or
you
not.
said, it's like it's
Yeah.
so simple
And
and
that's where I see maybe, sorry, that's where I see maybe where like are karmic things involved, where like if someone has worked their way,
mm,
there would have been masters and that have
yeah,
that this is how it works. If someone has worked their way in the human realm towards that, like prepared, gone through
exactly.
their stuff, learned and grown, then it's like, okay, the consciousness knows like it's it's ready, like, oh, this is the best person for
Yes, exactly.
this to have
Exactly.
this and to be doing this. So
Exactly. And that's when all the weird, insane life challenges that we've had previously can start to make sense. Because again, this for me, this whole illness that I've had, and I've mentioned this to you before, how mine has been so energetically intense. And basically what it's been preparing me for is to be able to hold more and more and more collective energy. And again, I don't know how that sounds to other people listening to that, but it's something that became very clear within myself. And that's kind of the space I work in more nowadays. Is like this body is just a conduit to process as much collective energy as possible. So like I often do that when I just sit, I make these like devotional statements of just like clear out this vessel and um, whatever this vessel can do to collapse as much distorted collective energy, then like let it flow through. And what you said there lines up so perfectly because it's like um, it's only possible because of like the years of like working somatically with like physical sensations and all of that. Because I can tell you to people that maybe that sounds cool, it feels like I'm going insane half the time, but the body
uh,
has learned how to process it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Well, I feel we've touched on so many good things, and yeah,
Yeah, no, this has been
I feel
crazy.
I'm almost like speechless now, like it feels good to like sit in silence or something.
Yeah.
So
Should we do that? Maybe finish with like 5 minutes of silence. Yeah.
actually, yeah, that would be perfect.
So
So
for everyone that's
yeah.
watching as well. Yeah. Just in silence.
Okay, you can call it when it's ready. So,
Yeah. All right. Let's just drop in whatever you're feeling, anybody, whoever this reaches, whatever you're feeling right now. What if we just let go of all the thoughts we've been carrying, anything that Noah or I have said? Um, what if we just release it? It did its job as well. If you watch the video and you have no idea what we're talking about, it doesn't matter. You received exactly what you needed from it. Um, and if that's like, this is crazy, I don't want to listen to this conversation anymore, then that's just right for meeting you where you're at. So just drop any ideas of, yeah, right or wrong, or better or worse, or should or shouldn't. Just be for a bit. Mm. And just allow yourself to trust the space. Trust exactly where you are right now. You don't need to move an inch, and you never have. right. Should we call it there? Thanks, Noah.